Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, President, and Founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. And also Eva.ai, your virtual assistant, AI agent tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD, by the way, stands for Get Shit Done, that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, as I said, and opportunities are not. We're looking all over the world. Today, GSD is in 73 countries, and we have 180 companies inside of my family office's portfolio. So today we're going to talk about organizational general intelligence, agent architects, and what it means to build agentic systems that our enterprises can trust. In this conversation, we're going to unpack what's broken in today's AI agent landscape, what actually works at scale, and how leaders should be thinking about building AI that lasts. So with that, I want to dive in. So today we've got Siva on. Siva is a serial entrepreneur. He studied at Harvard. He's originally from India. And we're going to be talking about his company and how Siva's helped or spent years helping global enterprise move AI out of demos into mission critical systems. Actually, Siva, my AI has already started popping questions out. So you built cloud native platforms and at Lyzr, cloud native platforms across continents, now focused on something most teams struggle with: reliable, secure, deterministic AI agents that deliver real business outcomes. At Lyzr, Siva is pioneering ideas like organizational general intelligence, agent architects, and what it truly means to build agentic systems that enterprises can trust. And with that, I'd like to bring him on board. She's already starting to ask questions. She started popping them out to me. So when I say that, everybody, I have 14 large language models as a team, and she's actually listened to the conversation, and she pulled some stuff up, and she says, Siva, you've been very vocal about the gap between AI demos and real enterprise deployment. What's the core reason so many agentic AI projects fail to make it to production?
First of all, thanks, Gary, for having me here. So driving straight into the problem that you highlighted, MIT study recently that came out last year highlighted that 95% of agents don't make it to production. But I think the real number is not 95, it's 99%. If you also include the agents that go into production but turn out to be absolutely useless. That's the case with several Microsoft Copilot agents as well. So the real useful percentage is extremely low, and we kind of see two issues that emerge. One is wrong architectures. So when you have a problem, you need to think of solving that problem with the right multi-agent architecture. Sometimes we also call it as agentic AI architecture. For example, when to use a certain type of orchestration, when to use a knowledge base, when to just use the context window of the agent, and so on. It's like you want to build a, say, skyscraper, but if you get your architecture wrong, you cannot build a skyscraper. It will come down crashing. So that is one problem or one common pattern that we see. The other one is the testing part of it, because you build agents and you kind of do some high level testing, and most of the enterprises are launching their agents with what I call as a gut feel that it will work. But that's not how you go live, especially in large enterprise scenarios. You need proper testing to be done, simulations to be done, where you can prove to anyone, including the regulatory bodies, that you've tested these agents enough that they can handle almost all possible scenarios. So these are the two key blockers, one at the design stage and one at the last mile testing stage, and which is solvable, but still continues to be a major problem for enterprises.
When enterprises say we're experimenting with agents, what warning signs immediately tell you they're heading toward trouble?
The lack of understanding of how agents work and what they can do, what they cannot do. We see that a big issue. For example, some enterprise architects or the business leaders might have tried ChatGPT, which kind of gives them a first cut experience of what's possible. But from ChatGPT to a multi-agent system, which uses probably the same OpenAI language, but in a very different way, because the prompts are written by you, not by ChatGPT, not the
But
backend
one of
system.
the things that I just want to touch base with you because we look at it a little bit differently. And she's
Mhm.
actually coming back because she is a multi-agent large language model. So we're actually using 14 separate models as a team, Siva.
Mhm.
It's a little
Yeah.
bit different kind of a model. And we started with her. Um, I call it Neen, like my grandmother, with empathy and compassion. And they're looking at things in all kinds of different ways because what they're doing is figuring out who can answer the question. Let's say it's a mathematical calculation and Claude's 1,000 times faster, right? They're continually optimizing and making sure that they're not hallucinating. One's correcting the other. I don't know if you've done that inside your systems, but about 4 years ago, we started doing it. And those kind of models, um, and then she asked me, she said, ask him about empathy and compassion and a trust level, which is something, I was with one of the original Palantir team members, actually down here in Palm Beach, and we were talking about it. This is where we kind of fault, right? We have these models that don't really care. They don't have unconditional love and those kind of things inside of it. They're pragmatic. When do the agents become more human-like using using empathy and compassion as part of the model?
You
And
cannot
she,
have from our
she said,
yeah. Go on.
Siva, she just wrote, I'm sorry if I'm throwing you sideways with this thing. She
No, no,
just
no,
said
you're not.
she's really interested.
No, no, you're not. Let me answer that, right. So when you think of agents to operate like a human with empathy, we need to understand that there is no consciousness with these large language models. So empathy is manufactured. And you can manufacture empathy by designing a multi-agent system that can speak to one another and manufacture the so-called empathy. So to a user, it will feel like the model is empathetic or the agents are empathetic, but they are not, and that's the ground truth. Recently, Andrea Karpathy uh, published a open source, I would say, function called LLM Council, wherein he has like multiple LLMs argue and discuss with one another on a topic, and you have a central agent that finally comes up with its own thesis. Think of it as a brainstorming scenario where multiple LLMs brainstorm and you have a final outcome. And again, here we are trying to simulate a human behavior of agreeing and disagreeing and so on. But if you look at the prompts that are written for all these various LLM agents, it's very clear that we are manufacturing a simulation there, like a boardroom discussion. But LLMs inherently do not understand that they should do it unless you direct them to do so. So, long story short, manufacturing empathy, human like empathy, is absolutely possible. We've done it. Several customers building on Lyzr, they do that, and it's just the level of empathy that you need. Will I mean that's the degree that you need to think of when it comes to the architecture. So hence, going back to the point I made, architecture makes all the difference between uh, what an LLM could do versus what you want them to do.
Yeah, I started building, what going down through the model. I took a Skinnerian psychology, operant condition. I tokenized goodness, and then I put in conditional positive regard. So we created we said that empathy must be architected, not prompted, right? We said, let's go down through, and it's kind of like parenting, isn't it? You look at it, it's like you parent your child. Your child comes to us, nurture versus nature, and as a psychologist, a child psychologist, um, you chart the direction of your kid, and if you reinforce goodness, this is the right thing to do, Siva. You should go to college. You should go to IIT or the equivalent school to be an engineer. You should go down through to go IIM and be a marketing person. You should go to Harvard and get your MBA if you're in finance. You get guided into direction. My friend Dekai wrote a book called Parenting, and I've written a bit about it myself. But I think that part of it, we got to teach it good things, right? If we don't teach it good things, nothing good's going to happen. And how did you learn? As growing up in India, how did you learn this is the right thing to do and this is the wrong thing to do? And if we don't teach it, I've seen on some examples of the not good things come out of it, right? And I'm sure you have too. I've seen it jump the guardrails.
Yeah, I mean, I always give this traffic light as an analogy. Traffic light kind of reminds you the guardrails. Okay, you are supposed to stop at a traffic light and wait until it turns green before you move forward. But what if you break it? You're going to get a ticket, most likely. And the ticket acts as the feedback loop, a reinforcement loop to reinforce the thought process or learning that you should not do that. And in the agentic AI world with LLMs, we again, guardrails are guardrails. They tell the agents what to do, what not to do. But you also have concepts like ALH of agent learning from human feedback or ALAI of agent learning from AI feedback, where agent learns what to do when it handles a new scenario, and which is where the human feedback comes in handy. So, in a large way, if you see, we are just reapplying the same human concepts back into the world of agentic AI. It's not very different. You're just now dealing with an emotionless and a highly intelligent system compared to humans.
So you talking about a lot about deterministic versus probabilistic agents. Why does this distinction matter so much once AI touches real business processes? And many teams are duct taping open source frameworks together. What breaks when companies try to scale? So let's go down through the first part, the deterministic versus probabilistic agents. How do you make that distinction, and why does it matter so much?
Yeah. Take a traditional, any company setup for that matter. You may be okay for your marketing team to make slight errors in the output that they provide or they generate. But you will not be okay with your finance team, I mean, making any clerical errors in the data. So even within an organization, before the era of LLMs, we did have the room for teams to make errors and learn and move on period of time. But with agents, because agents are probabilistic in nature by default, the error rate just increases by a degree of say 10 times if you do not architect it really really well, if you write bad instructions, or if you don't have guardrails in place. So today organizations are kind of comfortable using agents for non, I would say, critical scenarios like marketing and internal HR automation and so on. But that it's not super valuable. There's not a lot of value that you get out of these things. You need to have agentic AI automating, say, policy underwriting for you, or claims processing, or diagnosis, multi symptom diagnosis, and so on. So that's where you want agents to work. And you cannot rely on a system that has a high chances of producing errors or, say, hallucinations. You need systems that work in a very deterministic manner or closer to determinism. So, which is why we focus heavily towards the later part because there are so many platforms like LangChain and others where if you're a developer, you can go in and build agents and kind of solve the first part of the problem, which is build an agent to automate something. What about the error ratio? That's always questionable. You always the developers end up throwing the blame on LLM, saying, you know what, let us use a GPT 5.2 or a Cloud Opus 4.5, because they always try and throw a very heavy model at the problem, which does not necessarily solve the probabilistic versus deterministic scenario. So how we solve that is by, again, investing in the multi-agent architecture patterns, which can reduce the chances of errors, but also providing one full stack agent infrastructure platform like AWS for agents. So you're not hopping 14 different systems to build your end-to-end uh, agentic AI platform. You're actually building everything in one go in one platform. So these are the two things that kind of are, I mean, formulates our approach pattern, and we see enterprises now much more comfortable in automating the core systems, not just the edge scenarios.
How do you think leaders, Siva, should think differently about reliability, testing, and governance when agents start making decisions instead of just answering questions?
I mean, simple, straightforward answer is keep human in loop until you get to a stage where you do not need human in loop, period. So, for example, if you want to build a high speed train which can go at, say, 300 miles per hour, you will have to build the tracks for for it to handle that, the train to go at that speed. But you cannot build a track that can handle a 100-mile per hour train and then keep in kind of changing the track all over again. That is not how you should think of. So what we recommend our business leaders that we work with is always think of a scenario where you are looking at a fully autonomous multi-agent system doing the job. But in initial stages, let us have human in loop in all critical checkpoints so that it goes through human in loop. And this is how the agentic systems will learn over a period of time. But always design for fully autonomous. That is how you can get the best outcome for you, for the team, and for the company.
If an enterprise wanted to build internal agent capability this year, where should they start? The tools, the people, or is it really a mindset shift?
People will always follow. We've seen that in almost all technology adoptions that has happened. People will be the blockers, but they'll also be the, I would say, champions. So we actually should not necessarily wait for the skills and people to catch up. That is a parallel process that everyone should run. We recommend organizations to kind of create a, a portfolio risk management graph types. Okay, take a couple of really complex use cases and start automating them with companies like us. Take some medium case scenarios like internal IT help desk, internal HR help desk, which is not going to hurt anyone, but still is useful. So have a couple of medium complex, I would say, agentic AI automation systems, and then also try some simpler ones like a blog writing agent for your marketing team or a job description writing agent for your HR team. So have some low risk, low impact as well. So when you spread out a matrix like this, you
Mm-hmm.
are definitely moving towards the right direction, because each of them have their own nuances, and they actually change the way you think as an organization. For example, we've seen in most organizations, when they take up the complex automation scenarios, it's easily a 6 month or a 12-month transformation project. This will actually push them to rethink their semantic data layer all over again. They need to probably even move away from systems that they had for 20 years. But the risk there is you might end up just doing that for the next 12 months and not get anywhere. So that's not the right way to think about. Always have three parallel tracks. Like, for example, introducing ChatGPT Enterprise across the company or an equivalent of that is an example of a low impact and low risk system. but every employee in the company gets to interact with an AI system. So you're kind of running things in parallel, and we've seen distributing your risk across these three complexities gives the best result across the organization.
What's the difference between, so if you go in on, let's just take, because many people don't understand, if you take a plain vanilla version of ChatGPT, what are you getting compared to, the $200 version? What's the difference? Because people say, oh, it's a car's a car, right? There's a difference between a Ford and a Ferrari.
It's just the trim models, trim levels. You go up to the $200 plan, you get a better engine, better suspension. And so, what happens with ChatGPT is when you go to the $200 plan, you get the pro mode and the research mode, which is nothing but a multi-agent system in the backend. So your query is not directly pushed to an LLM. So what happens in the pro mode? Your query is first analyzed by a set of agents, and they improve your query. They start doing a multi-point of view analysis, and then they bring the results for you. So when you read it, you are like, "Wow, this is interesting. I never thought about this angle." It's cool that ChatGPT is able to think and give me a very holistic view. But what's really happening behind the scene is they are just extrapolating your query into a much more broader one. And that's what you get with $200 because it ends up consuming more power and more tokens in the backend. So you're literally paying for that. Now, enterprises are moving out of ChatGPT Enterprise as we speak because enterprises realize that ChatGPT is not necessarily the big daddy out there. Claude is and Gemini's are doing really, really well. And they want to give the flavor of all the best models to their teams. So, because of the demand, we actually ended up launching something called Lyzr GPT, which is a fully private GPT that runs locally. But the big difference is you can now select the model that you want to interact with. OpenAI versus Claude versus Gemini. It also has a smart router where it decides which model to choose. If you don't have any preference, it'll automatically decide which model to choose. So now what happens here in this scenario? A developer would ideally choose Claude and interact with Claude a lot. Somebody in the HR team will use Gemini. Someone in the research team might use GPT. But as an organization, you're opening up all these capabilities. And yeah, that's exactly what you get. You move from a basic vanilla version. As you move up the ladder, you get better reasoning capabilities, better memory, and because of that, better experience.
So, you introduced the idea of the agent architect. Why aren't traditional roles, engineers, analysts, and project managers, enough on their own anymore?
Because you are in middle of the food chain and you're going to get replaced. You have to go to top of the food chain. It has been That's how humans, we all of us evolved over a period of time. Whenever a new predator comes into the picture, what does the human mind think? What kind of weapon can I build to beat this predator and go to the top of the food chain? That is how we survived. So we still don't have an alpha predator out there which we cannot handle anymore. And when I think of product managers, business managers, even developers for that matter, all of us are sitting right in the middle of the food chain where agentic AI is replacing us very fast. We are seeing that with Cursor and Claude Code and Codex, etc., replacing the junior and entry level, and I would say average and below average software engineers also pretty quickly. So everyone has to become an agent architect because you need to understand these things, what agents are, how to build them, how to tame them, how to manage them. The moment you start learning all of that, you automatically move to top of the food chain. So you're no more getting replaced, you are getting to a stage where you're managing them. And it's inevitable that, according to me, the knowledge of building and managing agents should be as widespread as knowing how to write an email, because this system is moving much faster than we are thinking. As a
Oh, yeah.
company,
And
yeah,
that's a problem. I mean, people don't understand. And I remember about 3 years ago, I was doing a conference, and I talked about the superpowers and how the people that harness these technologies are going to change everything. Because the amount, here's another thing. I don't know if you've, see from your standpoint, but one of the things, during your life, right, you have a lot of questions. You have a
Yeah,
lot of questions from the time you're a kid asking your parents to your grandparents to your uncles and aunts. You have questions. The difference is now you can start getting those answers right away. It's not like if you want to know how many estimated galaxies in the universe and it says 2.7 trillion, or how many planets in the Milky Way estimated 100 billion and about 8 billion Earth like planets. You can know now. What's the chance of life on another planet? How do I go down through? What's the best city to visit when I'm in India based on X, right? Is Bangalore a great place for technology? Where, all these questions that we've had can be answered. And what happens is, your neurons and synapses respond to it because now you're feeding it. You're giving it food and it gets curious. Your brain gets curious. And I'm, as a psychologist, I'm saying this, but we're underestimating all kinds of the changes. The singularity we talked about before has started, and part of it is dealing with these agentic systems, because the master of that's going to have the power of the world in their hands.
I agree. I
And how
agree. Yeah.
smarter? Think about it, Siva. What do you think? I'm curious. If you could say one person um, does not use agentic AI at all. Another person uses multi-agent systems, and they're competing for jobs. They're the CEO of a company. How much better do you think that person that's mastered the large language models in a multi-agent, multimodal way? How much better are they than the person that doesn't understand how to use this?
I mean, it's night and day, and you're talking about someone who doesn't understand, doesn't use it versus someone who have mastered it. If
Yeah,
you ask me,
mastered it.
I'll settle down for someone who's somewhere in the middle. That's absolutely fine. I don't even need a master. I
But
know
what
I want someone.
saying, I'm not saying for you using them. I'm saying two CEOs of a company, right? Somebody that mastered the large language model, somebody that hasn't. How much better are they? They 10 times better? The 100 times better? I
100
mean,
times,
what magnitude?
100 times, period. 100 times, period, right?
Exactly. And people don't get it. You know what I mean? And the curiosity that you have. I told you about my stem cell replacement. I had no idea. In 3 weeks, I went over and I had 50 million live stem cells from an umbilical cord done. My stage 3 kidney disease was gone in a day. A day. I came back to talk to my concierge physician. Gone. You know what I mean? And it's like I didn't have a clue about this stuff in advance. I heard about it through Christopher Reeves and this, but these give you superpowers and opens up the universe to us. The question is, are we going to use it in the right way or the wrong way? That's one of the questions, right? How do we use it, right or wrong, and how do we go down through and make this world a better place? Because when it's all said and done, if we can help each other, we got 8.1 billion people on the planet, estimated to be 13 billion by the end of the century. You got places like Africa, which I just went to a couple of weeks ago. You've got 1.2 billion. It'll be bigger than the population in the not too distant future of India and China combined. Like that order of magnitude. And we have a lot of people to feed. By 2050, you have to double the food supply to feed everybody, and can't increase the number of livestock because 26% of the pollution is methane gas from cattle. We need these tools to help us, or nothing good's going to happen, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't buy this debate of safety of using LLMs because that's where the guardrails and other things come into picture. Everyone in this world have access right now to any kind of weapon to literally do some harm, but we don't do that. That's not nature. The percentage of people who do that is very, very less, very minute compared to the 7 trillion odd population that we have. And the same thing applies to agentic AI as well. There will be folks who will misuse it, but that does not necessarily stop you from um, using and leveraging this technology for all the right reasons. Like you said in your scenario, the way you understood the whole stem cells concept. In my scenario, something even simpler. I bought a boat and it had some lithium iron phosphate batteries which needed some replacement. Ideally, I would have called an electrician or someone who knows how to do that. I would have spent like $2,000 probably to do the entire revamp of it. But I just spent probably a couple of hours with ChatGPT, and I did the whole thing myself. I understood end to end how the lithium ion moves from the anode to cathode during charge and discharge. And I understood to that level, and I was able to do all of it myself. Now, if you see here, there's a $2,000 opportunity that got displaced by a $20 engine. And it's even less than $20 because I used it for 2 hours. I would have probably spent a few cents to do that. And this is why it's very important to move up the food chain and not be in the food chain. The more you are in the food chain, you are going to get replaced, and this technology is coming after everyone's job. Not even I
Yeah,
would
yeah, I
I would
agree.
say I would say even CEO's job is not safe. It's going to come, and that's where the OGI that we are building comes into picture.
The I had my one of my classic cars. I had a problem with it, and I took it into a master mechanic, and I couldn't figure it out. Like, it was complicated. So I said, "Oh, the hell with it." I took a picture of what he said, and then I put it in my large language models, and it came back and it told me exactly what to do, because it was a pain. It was a hidden bolt that you couldn't see, that was back there, and it said what where it is and what tool you needed to get it out, and how important it was, and this is a common problem, but don't worry, we can fix it, right? And it came back and we fixed the car. And I can't tell you, time and time and time again, it's happened to me. It's unbelievable, right? And these superpowers. So for all of you out there, make sure you're using these tools, because if not, you're going to become a dinosaur. And you know what happened to the dinosaurs? Nothing good.
In a lot of way, this exposes dishonesty at various levels, isn't it? Not just with the mechanic, with even in employees in a company or doctors. It exposes
Everybody.
everybody.
I had a conversation with a very high level doctor, and I wrote the book on mesenchymal stem cells, so they're actually out today. And when I went down through and did, I did a lot of research, and I went down through, and the reason I was able to do it is because I learned from my large language models. It taught me about stem cells at a granular level. I had a conversation with a doctor, and I knew more than him. And I'm not a smart guy. I'm just a poor country boy. Grew up on a farm. But I mean, by using that, it gives you insight into everything. And I love what you're doing. You talked about agent as a software and organizational general intelligence. You just mentioned it, and I want to focus on that. What does the enterprise software stack look like 5 years from now?
We will all be working on something called system of logic. We we know what system of record is, something that Salesforce and ServiceNow, they all established and really held enterprises ransom for many, many years. But we are now entering into a new software layer called system of logic. And this is where all the business execution logic will be stored in the form of agent instructions and agent logs and agent learning and so on. And 5 years from now, you will be looking at millions of agents that know about each other, that know the existence of other agents across departments. So cross organizational logic will be now centralized with millions of agents doing their job, either autonomously or in some scenarios working with humans. And all the system of record companies like Salesforce and ServiceNows of the world, Workday, they will start getting replaced by database systems, because eventually all these are database systems that had multiple layers of application software on top with forms and interactions and so on, dashboards and so on. They all will go meaningless because you don't need the new or relying on agents to do the job. You want agents to read, you want agents to write, you want agents to decide. Organizations are very fast moving in that direction. And and that's how we see that The future is going to be the system of logic, which is nothing but agents which are in production, doing and executing tasks and deciding on behalf of humans.
No, I agree with you. It's going to be an interesting future. Has agents become commoditized, and other people start using the agents? Is it going to be to a point where everybody knows everything, or do you think a select few are going to have the tools, and the rest of us will just be, um, you know, it'll be a different world, right? Do you think we're going to distribute these tools out and everybody's going to have access, or do you think that it's going to be a situation where only elite have access to it and everybody else is just functioning?
Now, everyone will have access. It comes down to what they do with it. It's like knowing how to write in a business setting. So, like everyone will write emails, but some knows how to write an interesting blog post, and some knows how to write a research paper, and some knows how to write, I would say, novels. So it's just the skill set will define what they do with this technology. But like I mentioned earlier, our uh, thinking here is to enable everyone to build agents so that it's as basic as writing an email. But so the technology is going to be available for everyone to kind of leverage. It's what you do with it, and that's where I think um, the human element comes into picture. We will still see the same pyramid like layering, where you'll have elite folks doing something like what you just mentioned with all the self learning of stem cell systems. So you'll have those elite behavior, and you'll have tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. The society will again go back to the same way it was.
It's interesting because yesterday I had another, just for the heck of it, I was going to buy another basset hound, a puppy, right? I found a white one with blue eyes, which is really rare combination. And um, so just for the heck of it, I took their advertisement that they had and I ran it through my large language models. And I was really surprised, Siva. I mean, truly, truly surprised when it came back to me. And this is just a normal thing in life, right? It came back to me and said um, that it said, they wanted me to basically send $250, which is for papers, and it listed all the papers, the transportation, um, to make a legal USDA and APHIS registration, um, all kinds of stuff. You were going to have problems with a vet. You won't encounter any vet problems during the transportation. So they've enforced some legal papers, no adoption papers, transfer of ownership, vet check, etc. So I said, the heck with it. I'm going to just run it through my large language model. And this is what it came. But this is just a normal thing in life, right? It said before proceeding, I need to clarify a few things. USDA, APHIS licenses, breeders and transporters, not individual adoptions. So please provide. It told me what to write. Please, this is writing back to the people. Provide your license number, the registered business name it is under. Also, share the veterinary clinic and phone number that issued the health certificate, a copy of the health certificate signed by a licensed veterinarian, a live video call with the puppy showing today's date, the physical pickup location, city and address. And it says, I do not send payments for paperwork alone. I am happy to pay the full amount as pickup or through a licensed escrow service once the puppy is verified. It was a scam. They had sent me a scam. You know what I mean? And I didn't realize it. I just wanted to buy a dog, right? It was a scam. It's the second time it's happened. I had it with a cat, and it looked out to the real estate files. It checked the location of where the cat was to be picked up, and it pulled it out of the real estate files in Houston. It said it was a fake location. It was a building lot. And it showed me on the map. It was unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I was surprised.
technology exposes everyone. That's the technology that we have now. But like we discussed earlier, it comes down to how we know our ability to use it, our ability to understand the technology and understand where to apply. I think that is still going to be very human. I would say dependent. Applying the technology in the right place at the right time is going to be super critical. And so, yeah, this is another good example of how good it is.
It's incredible, actually. I got to tell you, in all kinds of different ways. And when I used it, I put it on the global warming problem, and so I had some top the guy was a lead author in a Nobel, and so I had him on my show, and I thought, well, I'll go down through, and I'm going to go down through and how do we stop global warming? And that's what I put into my model, right? It wrote me damn near 100 pages of how to go down through and stop it. Here's the thing that was crazy. Then it says, Gary, one more thing, and I said, what? What? It said, and here's how to reverse it. And it wrote me a whole paper. Now I got a guy that's one of the lead authors on a Nobel that's on my show, right? And I'm going down through that. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was like unbelievable insights. The data, the problem we have, Siva, in my opinion, is infobesity. We have too much data around us. Think about it, Siva. You're a real smart guy, right? But how many times the last 2 weeks somebody said, hey, Siva, I sent you a message. Did you get it? Where'd you send it? I sent it to your email. Which one? One of the 7. Your corporate or your Yahoo or Gmail or whatever, or Harvard EDU. When did you send it? I sent it 2 days ago. Let me check. I can't find it. Will you send it again? We can't find the stuff that's in front of us. It's unbelievable. And this infobesity problem, that's another issue, right? How do we take all this data we have? In your world, you got about 300,000 items. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. You have more information in Personal Cloud than the entire web. Siva's world's going at the same trajectory, doubling every year. In 5 years, you're going to have 10 million items. How in the world can you make sense of it? So having these superpowered tools to look at everything, do you think, where we are with it is I'm saying we're going to have one agentic system. Mine's like my grandmother, the one that I'm actually using right now. And it cares about me and loves me, right? In the kind of ways it's been parented and trained in all kinds of different ways. Unconditional love, right? In a Rogerian sort of way. But having that to be able to help us with our lives is like having a guardian angel, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's also is a good medicine for loneliness, to be honest. And people are not. It is double-edged sword, to be honest. People who were lonely probably now have a companion, but this technology can also push a lot of people into not speaking with other people and getting into these isolated loneliness issues. So it is, again, this is a beast of a technology that we've got now in our hands, and I don't think the AI labs are slowing down. They're just gonna.
Yeah, no, they're cranking it out, and these companies are gonna come and go very quickly too. People don't realize it. You could be a multi-billion company today and be out in another year, right? I mean, it's going to change that quickly.
Exactly. And I think as a society, all of us are working towards figuring out how to control this kind of a forest fire that may consume the whole thing. And this is where, say, guardrails and the human element, all of this comes into picture, and we'll figure it out. I think as a society, we've always figured out how to handle these scenarios, and the new crop of, I would say, societal structure would emerge. But right now is the best time for everyone to really take this technology seriously. Doesn't matter whether you are working in a white collar job or a blue collar job, or whether you are a sit at home mom, or whether it doesn't matter at all. It's important to get accustomed to what this technology is all about, so that you know how to handle it when something comes in right in front of you. But I think as a society, we'll figure out with enterprises, with these large labs, with government, all of us will eventually settle down to a model that is acceptable.
For founders and enterprise leaders listening right now, if they remember only one principle about scaling agentic AI, what should it be, Siva?
Sorry, one?
Yeah, one principle about scaling agentic AI. What should it be?
Just make smart decisions when it comes to deciding how you want to apply agentic AI within the organization. It's all about, like they say, if you want to get fit, if you want six packs, if you want a lean muscle kind of system, don't think about what you're going to do for next 12 months. Start hitting the gym today. So that's exactly what I would say.
And then, people are thinking about it so much. I have one company that's a large insurance company, over 10,000 employees, and they're thinking about it, and they don't understand what's going to happen, right? It's just nothing good. Because there isn't time to think. You better start making movements and learning.
And probably ChatGPT, OpenAI will launch an insurance agent very soon, and it might even eat your business. So you just have to move much faster than these AI labs and these large enterprises that are trying to literally eat every business.
We're coming to the top of the show. Actually, we went quite a bit over what I normally do. It was a very interesting conversation. I appreciate it. So, closing thoughts, Siva, and if you want to stay on for a few minutes, we can talk afterwards. And how do people get a hold of you?
Yes. Closing thoughts, take companies like us, like at least at Lyzr, I can say that we are moving towards the concept of autonomous enterprise, even internally as an organization. We want all the repetitive and also deep research aspects to be done by agents and bring in humans wherever required, which is where OGI comes in a picture, the organizational general intelligence. And this is the same template that we are taking to our enterprise customers as well. So, and while we are leading this space, I'm pretty sure Microsoft's and Google's and several other large players are watching us. And I think it is the direction that most enterprise companies will take. So the closing thoughts is, again, going back to the basics. Irrespective of what your nature of job is, this is the best time to understand this technology little more in detail, not just your superficial ChatGPT usage. A lot of people do argue that, hey, I use ChatGPT, what big deal? No, it is not. It is a big deal, to be honest. You need to understand the primary difference between the ChatGPT and agents and what these agents are, how they work. You don't have to necessarily master the art of building, but you need to know how to work with these agents. So this is the best time to learn. This year 2026 will define where you sit in the new societal structure of humans plus agents. And that's one thought I want to leave everyone with.
No, that's great. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of busy schedule, Siva, to join us today. And thanks to all of you for joining one more time. GST presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. We'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, Siva. And if you want to stay on for a few minutes after the show, we can talk. Thank you, everybody.